Good evening and welcome to the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting for March 19th, 2018. Mrs. Benefield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bradford.
Here.
Mrs. Burton.
Here.
Mr. Centers.
Here.
Mrs. Frank.
Here.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Here.
Mrs. Benefield is here. President Johnson.
Here, we have a quorum. Mrs. Jarvis, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Gladly. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. We have some technical difficulties tonight. You're not going to see any video on the monitors. Unfortunately, our normal individual who takes care of that is off ill, and the backups, believe it or not, are not here as well. So we are going to be videoed. It's just not going to be up on the monitors. Again, thank you. Welcome to our meeting tonight. For those of you, unfortunately nobody's watching at home, but anybody in the audience who wants to follow along with our agenda, if you go out the door on the left and just to the right there's a table that has our agenda so you can follow along with us. Anyone who wants to address the board tonight during audience communication, you'll also find a blue slip out there. If you could just fill that out and hand it up to the table, we would appreciate it, and we'll get you on audience communication. I also want to note that after item 3D, we're going to take a short break. We have a number of recipients tonight. We have some very good things on the agenda, and we're going to just take a few minutes at that time to mingle and thank those folks for being here tonight. This is our regular meeting, or what we call a voting meeting. You're not going to hear a whole lot of discussion on the items tonight because we've already gone over these items probably already twice in two different meetings. It's brought to us initially at our study session, and then if you really want to hear the in-depth, the nitty-gritty and the drive down on these items, tune into our committee of the whole meetings. That's where we really have a lot of discussion. So tonight we've already gone through these, so you won't hear a lot of that. There'll probably be some, but not in depth like we normally would. One of the things that we as a district have been working on this year, and we need to continue to work on it, is the issue of respect. We teach that to our children, and we talk to them about respect between student to student, teacher to teacher, or adult to adult, and adult to student. And this board is committed to live that respect. So when you see us tonight, we will treat everyone in here with respect. We hope that everyone in here treats each other with respect as well as to the board, because the best way for our children to learn that is to see our example. So hopefully we'll do that tonight. We have a number of items tonight that this is one of those meetings where we have some really nice stuff happening, and unfortunately a lot of you may not want to stop or stay after we have our break, but that's okay too. You're more than welcome to stay and listen to the boring meeting. You don't have to do that, but if you want, we're here. So with that, we'll get right into our agenda. We'll start with our communications, and 3A is our Golden Apple Award. Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you. Good evening, President Johnson.
We will learn.
No, we're not going to do that tonight. President Johnson, members of the board, Superintendent Oquist. Tonight it's my pleasure to present a Golden Apple Award to a very special parent volunteer in our district. The Livonia Public Schools Golden Apple Award recognizes those in our district who go above and beyond for our students, our schools, our district, and the community by giving generously of their time and talents. Our schools are so incredibly fortunate to have dedicated support from our parent volunteers who assist our staff with everything from organizing special programs and events for our students to offering a helping hand in our classrooms. Kimberly DeSantis is no exception. In fact, she represents the very definition of a Golden Apple honoree. At this time, I would like to invite Mrs. DeSantis to join me at the podium And I know she's doing so reluctantly. She does not want to enjoy the limelight, but I promise I will make it easy for you. Step over here while I brag about you for a few minutes. Okay? Okay, Kim is the mother of Joey, who is a sophomore at Eastern Michigan University, Ben, who is a senior at Stevenson High School, and Rachel, who is an 8th grader at Holmes Middle School. She has been a parent volunteer in our schools for 16 years, since her oldest was a student, a preschooler at Jackson Center. She has run the gamut of PTA volunteerism. She's been a classroom volunteer through the years at 4 different schools. So we've got through the years Cass, Riley, Holmes, and Stevenson. In addition, she became involved in the Livonia Warriors Robotics Program, where she helps with administrative tasks and much more. She is currently a volunteer at Holmes Middle School, and it only makes sense that she was nominated for this award by Miss Iselina Carlini, who is a Holmes teacher and a coach with the Livonia Warriors, coach and sponsor of the Livonia Warriors. Miss Carlini is joining us here this evening as you give us a wave. Thank you for being here. In her nomination, Ms. Carlini states that Kim is positive and encouraging, while also being very understanding and sensitive to the needs of LPS families and students. She goes on to say that Kim gives freely of her time, not only as a worker, but as a leader. You might say that her specialty through the years has been running those good old book fairs at each school she's volunteered at. With the robotics program, Kim organizes events and often takes leadership positions for the capping ceremony and the awards dinner, for example. She thinks of unique ways to honor the students, making sure that all are acknowledged for their efforts. She prepares the certificates and photo frames for these events and has done this for many years. Ms. Carlini said Kim defines self-motivation, giving her best for kids and never taking credit. She said, and I quote, "Kim just gives her heart in everything she does." Kim says she has always enjoyed being involved in her kids' schools and supporting the teachers who make a difference in her children's lives. At this time, I'd like to invite Board Trustee Crystal Frank to join us at the podium. And we'll have a few more bragging points here and the presentation of the Golden Apple Award.
Congratulations. I just wanted to reiterate all that Stacy said, and you have just been such an example of truly a willing volunteer at so many schools. We met originally when your youngest, my oldest, was at Cass, and they put a baby at that time, and you have always had a smile on your face and so willing to do whatever was needed. And so it's not just the great things, but you've just been willing to do whatever is needed at so many schools and in so many different capacities. And so you are well loved by so many different people at LPS. I loved this part of the nomination. Kim has been a parent volunteer in many, many capacities at several of our schools, specifically Stevenson, Holmes, and Riley, and Cass. She sincerely loves our school system and is deserving of this acknowledgement. And I think that's the loudest thing, is that you love our schools and that you take care of all the little kids that come in your path, and now they're bigger kids. But thank you for all that you do for LPS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Here,
Do you have a speech?
I do. Because I will forget. I get nervous and then I forget things. Well, first of all, thank you all so very much for this. As I mentioned to Stacy, I'm honored, humbled, and quite embarrassed over this. This is not my thing, being in the limelight, but thank you to Ms. Selena Carlini for all the kind words, for the nomination. It really means a lot. She said if she had told me at the time that she was going to do this, I would have told her no. And she's right, I would have. But she's one of the reasons why I volunteer. She's just one of those teachers and leaders who goes above and beyond and truly cares about the success of the students in the classroom and out. My husband Todd and I, and our 2 little boys at the time, moved to Livonia 16 years ago, specifically because of the schools. Those 2 little boys are now 19-year-old sophomore at Easter and studying pre-med, and a 17-year-old senior at Stevenson going into digital media arts at Specs Howard. We added to that and have a 13-year-old daughter in 8th grade at Holmes who just made the decision this past weekend to quit playing travel hockey and to play for high school hockey. So go Livonia United Girls High School Hockey. All 3 of our kids started out in preschool at Jackson Center, then on to Cass, Riley, Holmes, and Stevenson. Throughout it all, I wanted to be involved, to be there for my kids and support the teachers, just as my mom had done for me so many years ago. I was fortunate and had the full support of my husband to quit working professionally and stay home with my kids. Actually, I was pregnant with my second. So when they became school-aged and me not being one to sit idle, I started helping out at school. So at every level, every school, we have come across some who have given 110% and have made a difference in our kids' education and have had a positive impact on their lives in one way or another. There have been many lessons taught, not just from a book, but relevant life lessons. And it's all been done with compassion, and you can't put a price on that. These include not only teachers, but librarians, principals, administrators, and secretaries as well. Some of these people have become very close friends, and what you have in this school district is very, very special. I am not a product of LPS schools, but I'm proud to have been a part of it through my kids' lives. And I believe that educating our children should be a partnership between the schools and the parents, and the best way I know how to do this is by being informed, involved, and supportive. So that's why I'm around, and that's why I volunteer. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this.
Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Jarvis.
I just wanted to add that as humble as Mrs. DeSantis is, she didn't really want to be here tonight because it's a robotics night.
But Ms. Carlini's.
That's true.
Mrs. Burton.
Thank you so much for going above and beyond. You are just a prime example of so many very, very dedicated parents that we have in our district. Thank you for your work through our PTA. Our personnel and our dollars can only stretch so thin. And at a certain point, we need our parents to step up and really, they put the icing on the cake, and you have done it so beautifully and been such an example to so many folks. So thank you, and it is our honor to honor you tonight. We appreciate it.
Other questions or comments? We couldn't do it without our volunteers. You give so much to our kids, and it shows. And we can't be more appreciative and say thank you. All right.
Okay.
We'll move on to item 3B, Points of Pride, International Baccalaureate Program. Mrs. Jenkins.
Yes, thank you, President Johnson. Tonight it's my pleasure to highlight another one of our district's points of pride, the International Baccalaureate Program at Franklin High School. The IB program is a very special offering in our district, giving its students an intensive academic experience with a global focus. I don't want to say too much because we have quite a presentation lined up for you. Joining us this evening is IB coordinator Sunshine Weber, who has brought several guests this evening. Most of the crowd here is for IB. Probably about half and half. We've got a lot of Golden Apple fans here too. Let's see here. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Sunshine Weber.
all very much for having us tonight. We appreciate it. Tonight we'd like to tell you a little bit about our program, and then I'd like to turn it over for some testimonials. So just, sorry, you're gonna have to crane your necks tonight, so I apologize as we go through, but there's not much on there. I'll be telling you most of it myself. Our program was researched and developed by Mr. Dan Willenberg and Miss Molly David, who's a teacher at Churchill High School. And they started the program at Franklin High School in 2009 with our first graduating class in 2011. And we have a graduate here from that first class tonight to tell you what he's learned over the process. In 2016, we completed what was called our 5-year review through IB, where we were evaluated as a program, and they told us what they would like us to see improved and things that we needed to work on as we move forward in our next 5-year segment. One of the things that I really like about IB is curriculum updates. So they don't believe in being stagnant as a program. So every course, every grouping is evaluated, and it's on a 7-year cycle where they change things. So this year it's math, next year it's English, the next year it's science, but every 7 years they update their curriculum around the world as a global program. The first item up on the screen is my favorite thing as you look at it. It's exactly what you have on the board behind you. It's their learner profile. Everything that we want out of our students, everything that I want in my own children, everything that was just talked about is what they highlight in IB. To be reflective, to be caring, to be respectful, everything that we want from our students is right there. And that's the core of the IB program as we go through. The second box there is a curriculum circle, and it's tiny, I know, but in the center is that learner profile, which is that first circle. And then surrounding it are all the things that make up the IB program. How we teach, how we learn, our subject matter, how teachers work with students, how we present information. And all of that is in a nice little circle so that everything's sort of equal and gives equal weight as we go through. So I can talk about those things for weeks, right? There's more than I can even tell you about tonight. So I'm trying to hurry and just highlight some things that really make the IB program sort of unique. The third box there is the focus on critical thinking and engagement. In our classrooms, our students don't recite information. They are taught to evaluate and analyze and discuss. Most of our classes really are engaged. Our students are engaged in figuring out what's going on and developing their own ideas. I think one of the hardest things for our students to figure out is not how to not tell what the teacher wants. Like when they first come into our program, they're like, well, what's the answer? And there's not really a set answer for IB. You have to support your answer as you go through. The final box up there is dedicated hours to creativity, service, and action. Over the course of 2 years, our students are asked to do 150 hours outside of the classroom, engaged in their community, being active, and developing a new skill. So we have kids take classes at Home Depot or cake decorating at Michael's, anything to learn something new as they go through our program. Challenging curriculum. The IB courses are college level. So many of our students can earn college credit. So what we're asking students to do is college level work in a high school setting. So it's like AP, only they're taking 6 college level courses at one time, no matter what. The variety of assessments is the second thing that I like most about the IB program. Our students are asked not just to sit down and take one multiple choice test. They're asked to give presentations, to write essays. The hardest one, as my students can attest to, is when they have to sit down with a teacher and do an oral analysis that gets recorded. All of those assessments get sent around the world and judged and evaluated by other teachers. So I'm an examiner. I just got a stack of essays from Spain. So it's really pretty cool to see what's going on around the world. And so we do a variety. They do labs, projects, all of that gets judged globally. Small class sizes, as a teacher, you can't beat it. I know you hear that over and over again, but our class sizes are typically 15 to 20, and it's amazing what you can accomplish
with a small group and what you can discuss and what avenues are open to you that aren't in a class of 35. Off-site education, there in that picture, our students are at Henry Ford. We go to Henry Ford, we've been to the Holocaust Museum, we go to the DIA every year. All of these things are places where they can apply their knowledge and their learning. The kids ask me to throw in food. Our senior class does food every Tuesday. Sorry, we didn't tell you that, Mr. Basie. Right, food is a big perk in the small class as they go through. College credit and acceptance, much like AP, depending on how well our students perform on their exams, they can earn college credit. And many of our students do go in as sophomores and earn quite a bit of credit. College acceptance, our students apply and are accepted to their colleges before they even learn if they earn the IB diploma or not, because they don't learn if they've earned the IB diploma until after they've graduated from high school. By then they're already in college. By the numbers, just a quick hitter. In district, we've had 110 students take some form of IB courses since our first class in 2011. Out of district, we've had 24 over that rate. Our diploma rate is about 52, 53%. It's a little bit higher globally, but we're against schools like International Academy and things like that where they sort of process those kids, but we're doing well. And every year we get a little bit better, as shown in that last graph. College acceptance, those are our high school seniors right now, a group of them with their college shirts. Many of our students go off to four-year universities. That's what we're preparing them for. That's where we want their goal to be. So tonight I have 4 guests with me who will give you their idea of the IB program. And I'd like to start with Miss Mary Wolf. She's a high school senior at FHS, and she is in the IB program.
Welcome.
Hello, like Ms. Weber said, my name is Mary, and I'm a senior in the IB program right now. I will be pursuing a career in biology with a pre-medical focus at Alma College next year. In my discussions with admissions representatives from the college, they told me their preferences lie more with IB than with AP because of the well-roundedness of the students and their rigorous education, as well as their dedication to creativity, service, and active hours. If I am able to earn the IB diploma, Alma College will award me 34 credits and allow me to enter college as a sophomore and graduate in 3 years. I believe that IB has prepared me for college by exposing me to higher level critical thinking and time management skills.
Thank you. Mr. Tim Niehazel is a graduate of the class of 2015. He's a junior right now at Michigan State University, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi everybody, I see a lot of familiar faces. So like Ms. Weber said, I am currently a junior at Michigan State, majoring in accounting with a minor in economics. So ultimately to me, when I first came to Franklin, I wasn't sure that the IB program was for me. Through my 2 years in the program though, I really grew to love the program. I learned its true value though when I left high school. When I got to college, I learned the value of the program. IB is so much more writing intensive than a traditional high school experience that my essays are second nature to me in school. I literally just finished an essay today due at midnight tonight, and it's something that I know I'm gonna get a quality grade out of because the experiences I've had through IB and all the experience I've had in writing. To me, the most important thing is the ability to manage a workload, and that's scary to a lot of kids going into IB when you say, this is college preparatory. A lot of my friends started college and they struggled in their first year. I was able to balance a job. I coach at Franklin, football at Franklin, and I also played intramural sports along with a full 15 credit semester, my first semester in school. Now I'm working just about full time. I'm still coaching at Franklin and I'm still taking 15 credit hours. So to me, being able to manage that workload is super important, and I think IB really helped me with that. Also, just the cultural experience of IB is so important. I was able to meet a Holocaust survivor. That's something, I sat down in a group of 20 people and talked one-on-one with a Holocaust survivor. I was able to get so many different experiences that a traditional student doesn't get to have, and to me, that has given me an experience that says IB is invaluable to me. And I really appreciate you guys listening to what we have to say about IB.
Mary's older brother went through the program, and Tim convinced his younger brother to go through the program, so it's a family affair. Mr. Brian Haupt is a graduate from our first class in 2011, so he was one of our guinea pigs, we used to tease him. He graduated from Michigan Tech. He worked for Lockheed Martin in Texas for a year, and now he's with Nissan.
Good evening, everyone. As Sunshine mentioned, my name is Brian Haupt. I was a student in the first International Baccalaureate class in 2011. After graduating high school, I attended Michigan Tech, where I became the president of the Mechanical Engineering Honor Society and was the team lead for my senior design group. In just 28 weeks, our team designed and built an impact test rig, which is now used by the U.S. Air Force to validate the electronics used on hard target penetration bombs. I graduated magna cum laude from Tech and went to work for Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth, Texas, where I worked as a structural analyst and design engineer on the F-16 Fighting Falcon. After a year in Texas, I decided to return home, and as Sunshine mentioned, I now work for Nissan. I'm a body systems design engineer there, and I'm working on the next generation Ultima and Maxima to achieve safety ratings. I attribute a large part of my success so far in my career to the skills I learned as an IB student. The ability to thrive in a high-pressure environment is a valuable trait that every IB student will learn due to the nature of being in a program that holds you to a global standard. The unique math and science assessments that are part of IB foster analytical thinking skills that now allow me to be highly effective in my daily tasks as an engineer. Quite possibly the biggest benefit that IB offers is the incorporation of each topic of study into multiple classes. At any time, I could be working on one project that tied into 3 or more of my classes in some way. For example, finding artistic inspiration while studying a Spanish activist in history class. This type of integrated learning creates a bigger picture way of thinking that drives curiosity and continued learning. I believe this cross-functionality is somewhat unique to IB compared to other advanced programs, and I think that it's also a key element of a well-rounded education.
And finally, Mr. Bagazinski, he's had 2 of his sons go through our program. Michael, who is here with us tonight, who was a graduate of last year's class, is at Nebraska, and Jerry is at Eastern Michigan.
Thank you, Sunshine. Esteemed members of the board, superintendent, and fellow parents, good evening. My name is Gerald Bagazinski. I'm the parent of 2 IB graduates. I'd like to take this opportunity to help shine a bright spotlight on the International Baccalaureate program at Livonia Franklin High School. It was 10 years ago, almost to the day, that Livonia Public Schools announced that they were going to begin offering the Ib Diploma Program, and I eagerly went to the first meeting. My wife and I spent a lot of time researching high schools. The highest rated high schools in Michigan and across the country were IB schools. This was a major coup for the school district. We recognized the value of an education, and we as parents wanted to make education a core value in our family. We knew the IB program presented a tremendous opportunity for our children to get a quality, well-rounded education. The International Baccalaureate program, as Sunshine mentioned, is a rigorous academic program whose mission is to develop the intellectual, personal, emotional, and social skills to live, learn, and work in a rapidly globalized world. The IB Diploma Program is designed for high school juniors and seniors. The classes offer the same same programs as traditional schools do: math, science, English, foreign language, social studies, and the arts. Additionally, the students have 3 requirements. They have to have a class about the theory of knowledge. They have to do their community service obligation. And they have an extended essay on a research topic of their choice. And along the way, students complete assessments that help them prepare for their final written exams, which are graded by external examiners. From a parent's perspective, this is the ultimate college preparation program. We could see, as parents, great teachers who were excited to be involved in the program and wanted to get trained to teach these classes. We were exceptionally pleased with the high level of instruction in the classroom. The classes were more in depth than the regular classroom offerings. While our children were in the program, we could see them becoming critical thinkers. They were much more knowledgeable about the world around them. They looked at problems from multiple and diverse viewpoints. They could see the interconnectivity of thoughts, ideas, and events which shape the world. And they became very thoughtful and introspective about the world. The conversations at our dinner table were also much more enlightened. By the end of their junior year, we also watched the quality of their schoolwork improve very measurably as they were making the transitional step from doing high school work to being able to perform work at the college level. The IB program offered our kids an excellent academic pedigree. The degree is respected worldwide. When we visited colleges, admissions officers found out that our children were in the IB program. Their attitude and interest in my children instantly increased. Colleges want students who are in the IB program because statistically, IB students are more likely than their peers to succeed in higher education. This is really important given the high cost of college education. The rewards are great too. There were more opportunities for substantial scholarships, which my children were able to take advantage of because they were in the IB program. My kids also received various college credit depending on the results of their IB exams, much like other students with AP exams. Now, 10 years later, Carol and I, like other families such as the Nehazels, the Thomases, the Wolves, the Mode families, have not only had one, but multiple children go through the IB program. We are extremely pleased with the results. Any parent that's hearing these glowing endorsements of the IB program tonight should go knock down the doors at Franklin High School and sign your kids up. Every parent says, I want to have a great education for my kids. Parents, this is it. Parents of 8th grade students, put your money where your mouth is and sign your kid up. Looking to the future, Livonia Public Schools needs to grow the IB program into a larger community and into multiple sections so it can offer more varied course offerings. The board should consider a plan to increase the presence, improve the marketing effectiveness, and reach out to junior high parents in both the public and local private schools. I'd be happy to share my ideas on this matter at another time, but I appreciate the opportunity tonight to be able to speak about the IB program. Thank you.
Ellie said that I'd just leave it to them to talk and get me out of the way. I'll do all the paperwork behind the scenes and they can speak for us. So thank you very much. I hope that gives you a little bit of a picture of our program, but we're always welcome to come speak with you, and we thank you for your support throughout the years.
Are there questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Benefield.
Go Huskies.
Mrs. Berg.
You mentioned earning an IB diploma. What kind of criteria? Obviously, these kids are already performing at quite a high level. What determines whether or not that IB diploma is earned or perhaps not?
So in each of the courses, there's those multiple assessments that they have. You combine all of those for a score of 1 to 7 in all 6 of their courses, so you can earn up to 42 points. And then there's 3 additional points students can earn for doing their theory of knowledge work, which Mr. Bagozinski mentioned, completing their 150 CAS hours, and completing a 4,000 word research paper on their own. So if they do all of that and earn above 24 points, they earn the IB diploma.
Okay, great. Yep.
It's a very rigorous test.
I figured it probably was going to be, right? One other question, what are some of the more interesting or enjoyable outside classes that your students have reported back as really enjoying? You mentioned several
like that.
community type classes that they can choose.
The cake decorating is always one that they want to do. We had Mary's older brother Chris did cookie night, chocolate making, and they figured out how to make chocolates and do that kind of thing. Tim did a bunch of classes at Home Depot and has worked at Home Depot through college now because of that knowledge that he gained during that. So those types of things.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I think the board needs to go to the chocolate one.
Exactly. And they would love to answer questions, my students, if you have any questions about the student perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? What are the requirements to get into the program, Ms. Weber?
So IB believes that any student should have access to the IB program. So the requirements are that you're willing to take on a challenge. We try to make it so that we don't set up our students to fail. And so we work a lot with our students to make sure that they're used to a rigorous homework load, but if you want to try it, you are welcome to try the program. That's how you have certain districts like Saginaw and Portage that have all IB. 9 through 12 is the whole IB school.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other-
And they are developing a career readiness program that they're just instituting now also.
Other questions, comments?
Well, thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you
Absolutely.
to our wonderful students and alumni and parents. What tremendous testimonials, and you should be so very proud for bringing the very first IB high school program to Wayne County.
Yeah.
Was the one at
Amazing.
Franklin High
Yeah.
School. So congratulations.
Could I just extend a big heartfelt thank you to Ms. Weber for her work in coordinating this program, and all the teachers of the IB program who've invested themselves in a specialized training and additional requirements, to be that teacher, additional instructional requirements and assessment requirements. It's a challenge to ask kids, hey, raise your hand if you want to read more, write more. But,
Do more
for the
work.
over hundreds of kids that have answered that call, I think they've found it a tremendously exciting experience. They've grown they've grown their whole person, and most importantly, in my book, they've become a person of the world, and have a better understanding of interdisciplinary studies, and as Brian mentioned, how everything's connected, and that we're all in this together, and I'm just very proud to extend a big thank you to Ms. Weber and the teachers and the students who've answered that call to the IB program.
We have a great advocate, obviously, and Mr. Willenberg, he'd love to talk your ear off about IB also.
Well, and I think we want to thank Mr. Woolenberg too for the foresight that you had a number of years ago to bring this program into our curriculum. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none? Thank you so much, Ms.
Thank you
Weber.
very much.
Appreciate
Thank
it. All right, that will bring us to item 3C, Read Across America Resolution. Mrs. Jenkins.
Hi, thank you, President Johnson. Celebrating March's Reading Month is always so much fun in our school district. Our schools really have a blast with activities such as family read-ins, book fairs, and theme days. Some of our more interesting events that I've noticed happening this month around the district include, have you heard of Low Tech Day? Which I assume it's take out
Getting rid of.
an old-fashioned book. Put away the devices and take out a book. Let's see, another couple that we've noticed around the district. One school had recently had a reading safari, so that looked pretty exciting. Another school had a vocabulary parade, and guest reader days and author visits are happening all around the district. Our high school students at Churchill got into the Dr. Seuss spirit by hosting a fun evening for elementary age students called Hats Off to Reading. This was a rescheduled event due to a snow date, but it did officially kick off March's Reading Month in our district. The list goes on, and it's our own form of March Madness. March Madness in our district. Tonight we are celebrating March's Reading Month by designating March 2nd, 2018, which is Dr. Seuss's birthday, as Read Across America Day, as declared by the National Education Association. Supporting this designation is our very own Livonia Education Association, and I would like to at this time invite LEA President Priscilla David to join me at the podium, and Board Trustee Dan Centers to also join us.
Why don't we, before we do that, why don't we get the motion?
Sure thing.
Could I have that motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mr. Centers.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolution in recognition of Read Across America during the month of March 2018.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. Mrs. Jenkins.
Okay, thank you. So reading the resolution, we have Trustee Dan Centers who will magically make his way to the podium. From one mic to the next. There you are. Come on up forward. Thank you for being here.
Whereas citizens of the Livonia Public Schools School District stand firmly committed to promoting reading as the catalyst for our young students' future, academic success, their preparation for America's jobs of the future, and their ability to compete in a global economy. And whereas Read Across America, the national celebration of Dr. Seuss's 114th birthday, on March 2nd, 2018, is sponsored by the Livonia Education Association in cooperation with the National Education Association. It promotes reading and adult involvement in the education of our community students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District call upon their citizens to assure that every child is reading together with a caring adult throughout the month of March, designated as March's Reading Month, celebrated today, March 19th, 2018, with the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education. And be it further resolved that this body recommits our community to engage in programs and activities to make America's children the best readers in the world.
Thank you, Stacy. To our school board superintendent Oquist, it is absolutely an honor to accept this resolution on behalf of our Livonia educators. This morning I found myself texting my sister-in-law first thing this morning because I wanted to tell her a book about a book I'm currently reading, the Chilbury Ladies Choir. We always like to compare notes, and I have to admit she's much better at remembering titles and authors than I am. Then on the way into work this morning, I started thinking back to a few years back on a school break when I discovered this Chinese tale called Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. I actually couldn't wait to begin reading it to my fourth graders. I held my breath after the first day's read aloud, wondering, are they going to love it as much as I had loved it? So you can imagine my relief when they walked in from recess the next day, asking me in a pleading tone, are we going to read more today? And then later on in the school year, their total indignation when I read them Saving Zasha, which took place after World War II in rural Russia. And why do those Russians hate Zasha just because she's a German shepherd? Followed days later by their tears of joy when her puppies were finally born. So yes, March is Reading Month, but every day of the school year, we as teachers have the absolute privilege of opening our students' eyes and minds to the world around them, to its people, and to its stories. And I think we actually would have to admit it's one of our most delightful responsibilities. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Centers.
I think if there's one thing we can give our students a level of reading. It's probably the most important thing we can do as a school district. Having a love of reading and will provide you with a thirst of knowledge that will sustain you your whole life. And it was really great teachers and family members that turned me on to reading. Some of my fondest childhood memories are my mom reading the Boxcar Children to me. Or after we got in from recess, the teacher picking up a book and reading while we kind of calmed down after lunch. Those are impressions that will stay with children forever, and it will serve them well as adults. So everyone who teaches, parents who read to their kids, thank you for all you do.
Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Bear?
But just like to thank several of the elementary schools who currently and over the many years have invited, among lots of folks in our community, but have invited our Board of Education members to come in for Guest Reader Day throughout the month of March. It is a joy. Part of what we do on the school board is a bit routine or a bit more mundane at times. Some things we do are absolutely painstakingly difficult. And then there are those moments that we can absolutely enjoy every minute. And I told a few people this week where I was reading high school graduation and March is Reading Month. Those are two enormous highlights for me during the school year. So to those folks who are listening from our schools or listening to this later, thank you very much for the invitation. It is an absolute joy to be able to come in and read with the kids.
Excellent. Thank you, Mrs. Byrne. Yes, Mrs. Frank.
Just to reiterate that too, I just want to thank so many of the volunteers that have been working very, very hard. Just like you said, Stacy, that it's March Madness for so many of the parents, so many of the teachers. That when I was at Riley on Friday, the teachers were decorating their doors for their themes for March's Reading Month. So people put in so many hours really to make it special for the kids and really to go the extra mile. And there are tons of parent volunteers who are in doing lots and lots of things to decorate the building to make it look fun for the kids. And so thank you to all of the teachers, the staff, and the students and the teachers and the volunteers who come in and make this a really special event all month long. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I want to thank the kids. I had the privilege of reading last Friday at Hoover, and the preparation of the students was amazing. These we had our chaperones that took us around, and these children were so engaging. They had no problem talking to you, asking you how your day was going, taking you into the classroom, escorting you out. They were absolutely wonderful, and that's a credit to the teachers. They did an outstanding job, and I want to thank them. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. Would you take the roll, Mrs. Bonnefield?
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Johnson?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you for being here. All right, that will now take us to item 3D, our district update from our superintendent, Mrs. Oquist.
Thank you, President Johnson. Before we take a break to thank all of our honored guests here this evening, I'd like to share a few highlights with all of you. So, our high school quiz bowls wrapped up their league play on February 27th, and I have some highlights to share thanks to Mr. Craig Barker, a longtime quiz bowl participant when he was a student at Stevenson, and coordinator now. So I'll share a few highlights that he shared with me. Churchill saw their top team, Churchill Black, take home top honors in what we know to be the KLA division of the Inter-County League. Mr. Doug Coates and Mrs. Molly David have done a great job of keeping Churchill at the top of the league year in and year out. Franklin has done an amazing job creating a program at Franklin thanks to Mr. Kevin Reyna. They are the youngest of the 3 LPS Quiz Bowl programs, but thanks to Kevin, students at Franklin now have an opportunity to pursue Quiz Bowl as an activity, and we are so grateful for that. They are a rising talent. Stevenson varsity teams had solid seasons. Our JV and novice programs, coached by Mr. Jonathan Cantor, had exceptional seasons, and the novice team, who are our first-year players, finished third in the division. The junior varsity team won the KLAA division for JV and came within one game of claiming the overall league title. Mr. Barker shares that he's very excited about the future of the Quiz Bowl program, and Stevenson's is the oldest in LPS, going back over 25 years. So congratulations to all of them. I'd like to share a little bit about our talented musicians. This past month, our students from Churchill and Stevenson saw a total of 7 LPS ensembles that performed, 4 from Churchill and 3 from Stevenson, at the MSBOA District Band and Orchestra Festival. They received 1s in every category, which is truly exceptional. The Wind Ensemble and Orchestra received A's in all 20 categories. This is tremendous. It's reflective of their outstanding instruction and the practice and dedication of our students. We have some artists to be noted. I have not previously heard this acknowledgement for students in the past, so I'm excited to share with you that the Stevenson Art Program had 2 national scholastic winners that will have their work displayed at Carnegie Hall in New York City. Grace Menning, who's a junior, won a gold medal for photography, and Brian Olenzik won a silver medal for ceramics. And this is one of the highest level recognitions a high school art student can earn. So congratulations to them. Okay, so hang on to your hats. We have a lot to share from winter athletics. We continue on with our talented students. We had athletes from both Franklin and Churchill who moved on to state finals in individual wrestling matches. 9 members of the Stevenson swim and dive team competed at the Division I championships held at EMU. Our Stevenson boys basketball won districts, I believe, for the first time in 7 or 8 years, and moved on to the regional semifinals. Our gymnasts competed at the state level, where we had 1 student athlete earn state championship recognition, and she will be here with us next month. We had 3 teams, our Livonia Blue Gymnastics, Stevenson Varsity Hockey, and Churchill Varsity Hockey, all earned regional championships in the KLAA. Big congratulations to them. Stevenson Hockey went all the way through to the quarterfinals and lost a hard-fought game in the quarterfinals and had an outstanding season. As I'm sure you know, Churchill won their quarterfinal and semifinal games, and for the first time in history played in a state championship game at USA Arena, and boy was that an exciting game. We congratulate our opponents, Detroit Country Day, who ended up taking home the Division II state championship, but we are so proud of our Chargers for making it that far. Congratulations to Coach Jason Reynolds and the whole group over at Churchill. I'd like to acknowledge 2 of our students who have earned just a tremendous accomplishment for those of you that know what it takes to earn the rank of Eagle Scout. Proud Scoutmaster of Troop 782, William McCarley, announced that 2 high school LPS students achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. Churchill 10th grader, Carson Ellis, and Stevenson senior, Brian Reppenhagen. Carson's Eagle Project was an herb garden for residents at the Methodist Children's Society facility. 12 people assisted for a total of 204 volunteer hours. Carson plans to study aerospace engineering at the University of Michigan, would like to join the NASA program after his graduation from U of M. Brian's Eagle Project was a 12-foot by 35-foot patio for the Finnish Cultural Center. 28 people helped with the project for a total of 234 hours. Brian plans to study biomedical engineering at Michigan State University or the University of Michigan. So congratulations to both of them. I had a section on robotics, but I see some of my robotics friends back there, and I think they're going to come up during audience communication. So I am not going to steal their thunder about what a great weekend they had, because I know they're going to share that with us in a moment. I just have a couple others. A big thank you to all of our middle school administrators, staff, and activity directors for throwing another great activity night. We had a carnival-themed activity night Friday night at Holmes for all 3 middle schools. Over 800 students participated. It was the 3rd of the year. Each of the middle schools have taken their turn at planning and hosting, and what an outstanding job those folks do. A great time had by all. I want to join Mrs. Burton and our guests up here, our board up here, talking about getting out to schools for March's Reading Month. That is definitely a highlight. I am enjoying sharing a favorite book or 2 with our students, and I know many of you have enjoyed that as well. Finally, we have some big performances going on this week. We've been sharing it with you via social media. But we have our Kappa students who are performing the Laramie Project, and I believe their last 2 dates, Mrs. Jenkins, are Friday and Saturday. Is that correct? Okay, and seating is limited because it's a special performance in their black box area, so a little smaller seating capacity. And then Stevenson is putting on, their theater group is putting on Mary Poppins. So they will be performing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. You can get tickets at the box office, but we suggest you get there a little early to get your ticket and get your seat. So just congratulations, Mrs. DeSantis. I know we've known each other for many years, and what a well-deserved honor. It's wonderful to see you and your family here. Thank you so much, Sunshine, and your whole group. All of our raving fans of the IB program, we are thrilled to have you here. And Mrs. David, it was a pleasure to have you come up and accept the resolution and to share a little bit about not only what makes reading so special, but what our teachers love about that aspect of the great work we get to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Oquist. I've had a suggestion to go ahead and move audience communication up before we take our break, so that we can have the robotics team give us their update while we have a lot of folks here. So if the board will indulge us.
Sure.
All right. We'll move to item 3F, audience communication. And we have the captains, Aaron, Griffin, Jake, and is it Vance? Vanch? Okay, folks, come on up.
Come on up.
Tell us what's going on.
It was a big weekend for all of you.
It was. Right.
We're excited to hear about it.
Hi, my name is Griffin.
And I'm Jake. We are members of the Livonia Warriors. We consist of 10th, 11th, and 12th graders from all 3 high schools.
My name is Aaron, and I'm a warrior.
My name is Vanch. I am a member of the Tyros team. Tyros means young soldier or new recruit in Latin. We are primarily 9th graders from all 3 schools. This is our first ever season, and it has truly been an amazing experience.
Firstly, the Livonia Warriors and the Tyros team would like to thank the Board of Education for their support in working at the Dickinson Center. Our area has been transformed into a STEAM center, and we would not be able to do this without the Dickinson Center space. Thank you so much.
Both the Livonia Warriors and the Tyros team competed at our first district competition this season at Lincoln Consolidated Schools. Both teams were exceptional competitors and made it to the eliminations rounds. The Tyros team entered the eliminations as the 8th Alliance captain and moved up during the selection process to 4th. The Livonia Warriors were selected by the 7th Alliance captain.
Both teams battled hard in true warrior form, and it seems the little things stalled both teams. Unplugged batteries, forgetting to check voltages, loose screws, and the competition was so very tight. Standing still, the lack of speed, or not being able to deliver on just only one mechanism seemed to make the difference. Both teams were eliminated before the finals, with 28-32 going out in the quarterfinals and 68-61 making it all the way to semifinals.
However, the awards ceremony was a great time for everyone, sitting on edge with both teams having worked to submit and present for awards. 28-32 won the Creativity Award, gaining 5 qualification points for state championships, while the Tyros team, first time out, rocked the house by winning highest rookie seed and rookie all-star award with an automatic bye to states.
We worked together and supported each other with a tremendous amount of respect. Parents and mentors cheered equally for both Livonia teams. It was amazing to see the amount of people out from Livonia all the way to Lincoln to root for the teams. Our cheering section was over 100 people.
Both the Livonia Warriors and the Tyros team, thank you very much for your support. Power up, everybody. Livonia competition is in 2 weeks. Miss Oquist, we have a gift for you. It's a yard sign.
I will proudly display that.
I also would just like to say, President Johnson, members of the school board, Superintendent Oquist, everybody on the team thanks you intensely for letting us use Dickinson Center and giving us your extreme support through all 10 seasons of being a team, and especially for our new rookie team, Tyros 68-61. I personally would enjoy talking to you greatly about the robotics program at Livonia Public Schools. I don't know about these guys, but well, I would enjoy talking to the board greatly about it at a later date. But we thank you intensely, and we really appreciate your support.
Thank you, and we are
Thank
looking
you.
forward to coming out and seeing you. Do you want to tell everyone about March 30th and 31st?
Yes, the Livonia Competition is March 30th and 31st at Churchill High School. I'm sure you know where Churchill High School is. We will be there along with 40 other teams in a Week 5 district competition. This year's game is called First Power Up. It's very exciting, and we would appreciate it if all of you came out and watched us compete.
Great, we're looking forward to it.
Do you have a time on that?
We do have, competition starts at, is it like 10?
It's about to be 11.
It's 10 or 11, it depends.
Okay, so look.
They have a schedule, we'll get that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Livonia Warriors, Facebook, Livonia Warriors 2832, YouTube, Livonia Warriors 2832. That's the big ones. We have updates, and we appreciate you doing that intensely. Thank you.
Somebody's going into broadcasting.
Not me, Ben's doing that.
Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right, we will now take about a 5-minute break or so, and we will come back, and if there is any other audience communication, we'll pick it up there. Thank you. We'll be back.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, and we are back, and we will pick up with our agenda. We'll go to item 3E, written communications. Are there any written communications? Seeing none, we'll pick up with audience communications. I do not have any additional blue slips. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board? If so, you can bring the blue slip up. I do not see anyone approaching, so we will move on to item 3G, response to prior audience communication. I do not have any response to prior audience communication. Are there any? Mrs. Oquist, do you have any?
I do not.
All right, then we will move on to item 4, the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson,
Mrs. Bradford.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the following consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent. 5A, minutes of the regular meeting of February 12th, 2018. 5B, minutes of the special meeting of February 26th, 2018.
Support.
Nice.
I heard Mr. Centers. So we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford and supported by Mr. Centers. Is there any discussion or questions on this item? Seeing none, Mrs. Bonnefield, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Centers,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes, President Johnson,
Yes, motion carries. That will take us to item 7, business matters. 7A is approval.
6A.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. 6A is approval of bid results for Phase 5 construction projects. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Bonnefield.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation from the owner's representative, Plant Moran Cressa, to approve the Phase 5 masonry and carpentry construction for a total amount of $1,425,824, which includes hard construction and a reduction in total project's contingency budget, and authorize the superintendent or her designee to negotiate and execute final contract on behalf of the Board of Education with the recommended contractors.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Francis, will you be helping us with this?
Yes, President Johnson, thank you. The recommended contractors for the Phase 5 masonry and carpentry construction projects will provide the work needed to complete the renovations for Buchanan, Webster, Jackson, and the Livonia Career Technical Center. I just want to take a side note here and mention those vendors. We have in masonry for those 4 summer projects, Lytle and Hart Mason out of Livonia, Michigan. And the finished and rough carpentry is Diversified Construction Specialists out of Rochester Hills. We also have the mason for the entryways, which are at Churchill, Garfield, Nigiero, and Central office, and that's Baker Construction out of Whitmore Lake. These vendors will cap off the last month's board-approved vendors for the summer of 2018 summer bond construction and entryways projects. And we do recommend approval of this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Centers?
In the motion, it's noted that there is a reduction in contingency. Can you explain why we feel that's appropriate?
Yes. Once we had reviewed the bids in totality and once again reviewed the alternates, the contingency, etc., it was determined that now being in phase 5 of 5, in other words, our 5th summer of doing this work, we could reduce our contingency from 8 down to 7%. We are more familiar now that we're at the latter stages of the bond work with our our general progress through the summers. Our design team had actually an extra week in the phase of design to tighten up their plans, and we're confident that a reduction of the percentage is appropriate at this stage of the game.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Bonifield?
Mr. Francis, could you just remind us, I see that these are for both the bond and from sinking fund dollars. Remind us which projects are for the bond and which projects are associated with the sinking fund?
Absolutely. The 4 elementary schools, Buchanan, Webster, Jackson, 3, and Livonia Technical Center, those 4 slated summer construction projects and them including their entryway into that is all from the 2013 bond. When it comes to the entryway features only, we are still out of bond going to Churchill and to Garfield Community School and completing their entry archways. Those just weren't done during the original construction period for timing purposes and trying to get some economies of scale and bundling all the entryways together. So that would leave Nigiero and this board central office administration building as actually being funded out of the sinking fund.
Thank you.
The entryway, yes, the entryway project.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bonifield, supported by Mrs. Bradford for the approval of bid results for Phase 5 construction projects. Mrs. Bonifield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bonifield says yes. Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
President Johnson?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. That moves us on to item 6B, approval of bid results for move and IT move management services. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Johnson, President Johnson.
Mrs. Burton?
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation from the owner's representative, Plant Moran Cressa, to approve the summer 2018 move and IT move management services in the amount of $165,204, plus contingency in the amount of $25,000, for a total of $190,204, and authorize the superintendent or her designee to negotiate and execute final contracts on behalf of the Board of Education with the recommended vendors.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Bonifield. Mr. Francis?
Thank you, President Johnson. We do have 4 recommended moving vendors. Give me a moment and I'll run through them for you and for those that will be watching at home. We have Palmer Moving Services at the Livonia Career Technical Center. We have Premier Relocations at Webster, Rose Moving and Storage for Jackson, and Corrigan Moving Systems for moving at Buchanan. So these recommended vendors will be ready to help do the move out and move in of both standard items as well as IT for the summer 2000 construction projects, and we recommend the board approve their services.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Bonifield, for the approval of bid results for move and IT move management services. Mrs. Bonnefield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
President Johnson?
Yes, motion passes. That takes us to item 6C, approval of Phase 2 paving projects. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson,
Mrs. Jarvis?
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation from the owner's representative, Plant Moran Cressa, to approve Nagel Paving, Novi, Michigan, for pavement projects at Buchanan Elementary, Randolph Elementary, and Cooper Upper Elementary Schools in the amount of $882,280, plus a contingency of $88,228, for a total cost of $970,508, and authorize the superintendent or her designee to negotiate and execute final contracts.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mr. Centers. Mr. Francis?
Yes, sir. I would like to recommend Nagel Paving for this planned sinking fund project. As you know, this is phase 2 of potentially 3 that we'll be bringing to the board for the summer of 2018. For those of you that are familiar with Nagel Paving, while we do state their home office is in Novi, Michigan, they do have a manufacturing plant here in the city of Livonia, so we generally associate them with the city of Livonia. But again, would like to recommend Nagel for this important paving project at Cooper, where we have planned paving project for both traffic flow, resurfacing, and drainage, as well as Buchanan and Randolph Elementaries, where we're looking to expand parking and get traffic flow moving better. And this is, again, if I didn't mention it, a sinking fund project.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Centers?
When we first started discussing paving projects, Grant was a part of this list. Can you just give the public an update about Grant and why it's not included in the this bid right now?
Absolutely. As mentioned, this is 2 of planned 3, and Grant would be included. We're going to be bringing that in the next round for the month of April. Both Grant as well as we have a little bit of work at Frost Middle School in the tying in to one of their driveways to the Stark Road project that's occurring with the city of Livonia.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Francis, you mentioned drainage at Cooper as well. Is Nagel doing the drainage as well as the paving?
It's and most of that occurs with the earthwork as well as the actual what NTH did in the design as far as trying to get the tie-ins with a swale and some other civil engineering to tie into the Westland storm.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Burke?
Mr. Francis, I believe we talked about this at the committee of the whole, but I don't remember which buildings fell in this category or not. Of these 3 buildings that we're talking about right now, Buchanan, Randolph, and Cooper, which, if any, are going to be having additional parking spaces available?
That would be, well, actually, all 3 of them are going to have a net gain. It happens at Cooper simply from the restriping, but with Buchanan and Randolph, it was a purposeful addition of asphalt and hard surface to get the additional spaces.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mr. Centers, for the approval of Phase 2 paving projects. Mrs. Bonnefield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Johnson?
Yes, motion passes. That takes us to item 6D, approval of bid results for athletic field projects. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson,
Mrs. Frank?
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools, the school district, approve the recommendation from the owner's representative, Plant Moran Cressa, to approve athletic field improvements for Churchill High School and turf replacement at Churchill, Franklin, and Stevenson High Schools in the amount of $945,122.68, plus contingency in the amount of $131,581, for a total of $3,076,703.68, and authorize the superintendent or her designee to negotiate and execute final contracts on behalf of the Board of Education with the recommended contractors.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Francis.
Yes, President Johnson. The sinking pump project for the athletic field improvements are at Churchill High School for the summer of 2018. Just to give a better description, athletic field means we're doing the football/soccer field, the turf. There's several parts of doing that with regard to turf pad, some earthwork, the track, the softball field, the baseball field, as well as some surrounding pavement and fencing. Also to clarify that Churchill High School project has been bid out in totality for the summer of 18, but the turf has been bid out for Stevenson, Franklin, and Churchill for both summers of 18 and 19. So we do have the locked in pricing as well as manufacturer for all three high schools to have the same product. And to clarify, just for anyone who is looking at the contingency amount, that is a contingency solely on the Churchill amount for the summer of 18. And then we will come back next summer, next winter, spring, and discuss the Stevenson and Franklin, and those projects will have their own contingency put on them.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Centers.
So this is obviously an expensive product. Could you describe to viewers or people listening today why, a little bit about the product, why it's advantageous for us, and the average life that we'll get out of this?
Sure, I'll talk specifically. I think you might be speaking of the turf itself.
Correct.
Am I correct? Okay. So AstroTurf Corporation, who I'm sure many have heard of AstroTurf Corporation, was the successful low responsible bidder for this project. Again, this is, first of all, the products that they are responsible for are the turf and what we would call the concussion pad is oftentimes referred to on the football/soccer field. So we're talking about 3 full fields worth of pad and turf, and 2 baseball infields fully done, both the infield, I know people at home might not be able to see me because of the camera, but I'm doing bunny ears here, infield grass, as well as the whole base path area and warning track, etc. We're also talking about enough turf for 3 softball outfields for all 3 buildings. So there is quite a bit of square footage or square yardage on the turf, on the pad. So yes, this is seems like a large number, but actually came in under our estimated budget that Foresight Design came up with, and they know the business. They do many schools in the area, and we were very pleased with not only the way the bids came in, but also the alternate bids that we were able to accept, saving money on an equivalent pad, and then getting the next level up of turf product, which in the long run will give us a longer lifespan on the football/soccer fields across all 3 high schools by holding in the field infill, and essentially the product that is going to be the pad has on it a 25-year guarantee. They claim it goes even longer. They mean the manufacturer, and essentially you could, after many years of turf use, peel that back and keep the pad beneath it and lay another turf on it, and they're claiming you could do that up to even 3 times. And if we did it twice, that'd be incredible. So we're very pleased with the product that we came across here and that we offer up to the board for your approval.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Oquist.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge Mr. Francis and Mr. Archibald, as well as our athletic directors and high school administrative staff. This has been many months in the making, so I know we spent some time on this last week at our committee meeting discussing this, but the input we were able to garner from the folks who are utilizing this via the coaches, the athletic directors, and again, staff and administration, and then led by our district leaders here. In addition to our work with Plant Moran Cressa, our group took time to visit other fields, other athletic facilities, take a look at the materials we're discussing. So although we're all in one bid package here, there was quite a bit that has gone into this. And if you think about it, we have many students from football to soccer to pom, cheer, marching band, track and field, baseball, softball. There will be many student athletes and activities that will be taking place in these renovated areas. So we're excited to get Churchill done this summer, and then we'll be moving on to Stevenson and Franklin next summer. But I just wanted to acknowledge my folks to the right who have spent quite a bit of time putting this package together, and I think these will be areas of which our community will just be tremendously proud. And I know that our student athletes are very excited about it. All of our students will be participating in these areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holmquist. Any other questions? Mrs. Bonnefield?
Mr. Francis, could you just remind us why we picked this time period to redo the football fields?
Sure. The fields, while still, they're at what we would call end of life. They are still within the GMAX rating for use, but we've had those tested periodically. We had them tested during this school year, and actually last spring, getting ready to come into this school year for the football season. They are within the guideline ranges, but we also know that they are at basically the end of life. So before they get out of the appropriate GMAX ranges, we want to start the process on changing out those fields while they still are have use. And so we know that Stevenson and Franklin still have another season on theirs, but we'll have them repaired replaced in time. And they've been 2003, I believe, right? They went in approximately 2003, so we've gotten quite a good run out of our original field turfs in the 3 high schools by taking care of them over these years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Francis? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're doing work in addition to the football fields at Churchill this year. Are we anticipating similar work at Franklin and Stevenson?
Yes, excellent question.
The next summer?
So what we know is in the scope for both Franklin and Stevenson that is similar or the same as Churchill are the fields that I mentioned: the softball, the baseball, the track, and doing the football/soccer field. We also will take a look whenever you do a project like this. You do the field, and then you look at the track that's adjacent to it, and the fence that's adjacent to it, and the asphalt that's adjacent to it, and you start to see what's needed, what's not. I've had conversations, ongoing conversations with the athletic directors and principals at Stevenson and Franklin. They're taking note of what is needed that might be unique to each of them in the smaller realms of projects. As a quick example, we have quite a bit of asphalt between the football field and near the concession stands at Churchill that are in very poor repair. They're in disrepair right now. We're going to be redoing them this summer. That's not the same at the other buildings, but they have their own concerns. And I've spoken to both athletic directors about those, and I said, jot those down, and when it comes to design time, we'll talk about what's specific to your buildings. But in totality, the large items will all be done at the same 3 buildings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Fair?
And tagging along with your comments, Mr. Francis, those fencing, track and turf items all are falling under this quoted dollar amount.
Yes.
With the exception of the,
Contingent.
the turf rather for the other 2 buildings.
Yes.
That's included in the salary. But the track and
correct.
fencing is not included.
Anything outside the turf and pad, anything outside of the AstroTurf Corporation is specifically bid for Churchill this year. We'll need to come back and bid the same type of work in the summer, for the summer of 19. Whether these vendors win that work or not is yet to be determined. It'll be based on the bids at that time. But we do know that we have the turf and pad from AstroTurf Corporation over all 3 schools over both summers.
Okay, so it's the all 3 pieces, the fencing, track, and turf at Churchill, and the turf alone at Stevenson and Franklin in addition to that?
Correct.
That's in this bid right now?
Turf and
Gotcha, okay.
And the site work is in this as well, where
Yes.
they have to come around.
Right, just so the folks don't think this is just for turf only. This is a lot of additional work.
This is a whole lot of work at Churchill, plus the turf carrying over, correct?
Gotcha, okay.
Thank you.
Also, for those that didn't have the opportunity to see the logos, or the photo of the turf that we had passed around at the committee of the whole meeting last week, it really is pretty exciting. It's there are, like for example, Churchill that we're looking at doing this summer, if this passes tonight, has Churchill on one end zone, Chargers on the other end zone, and a school logo in the middle. So it's pretty exciting.
There's some other things, and it's different than, it's going to look different than what it looks like right now.
Get a lot
Let's
of
put it
bang
that
for
way.
a buck out of this one.
Same with the ball fields. They're going to be noticeably different to the eye, and it's not just the aesthetics of it. That means with that site work, the work to do proper drainage on fields, and any track repairs that are needed, all of those types of things. It's going to be shiny and new and colorful, but it's also going to be ready for use in the areas that you don't see.
And then I've had some folks in the community ask me, why are we doing turf and not grass, and what are some of the pros and cons? But just so the public is aware that safety is a huge issue, because this is safer for our student athletes to be on this kind of a field with concussions and other falls and so forth, but also the durability, that we can have multiple kids on a field, one team after another, and that's not at all uncommon, that we'll have 3 or 4 teams when they're in season. One follows the other right across the evening, from right after school until 9 or 10 o'clock at night sometimes. And then we also can have community groups that do use it on the weekends when our students are not using it. So having this kind of a turf field also allows us to have just continuous use, that we would have to give a grass field more rest than we need to put on to give this field, and therefore we can put more kids on that field.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Bradford, for the approval of bid results for athletic field projects. Mrs. Bonnefield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Johnson?
Yes. Motion carries. It takes us to item 6E, approval of purchase agreement with St. Mary Antiochian Orthodox Church. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mr. Centers.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve delegating to the superintendent or her designee the authority to enter into an offer to purchase real estate, pardon me, offer to purchase real estate agreement and execute said offer in any documents necessary and incidental to the sale with St. Mary's Antiochian Orthodox Church, whereby St. Mary will purchase approximately 7.07 acres of vacant land located directly east and south of the church's property for a total of $200,000.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. Mr. Francis.
Thank you, President Johnson. This offer to purchase real estate agreement between Livonia Public Schools and St. Mary Antiochian Orthodox Church is specifically for a section of land that is located directly behind, meaning to the east of where St. Mary is located now. That's a rectangular portion of land that would go from behind their property to the end of the field the line there's a subdivision on the other side. So it is a rectangular section that is directly behind St. Mary's now. It's not all of Bryant, it's not the entirety of the land. It's a little less than 7 acres that's directly behind the church now. And 20 feet that goes from east to west, all the way across the field, and 20 feet north and south, so in other words, on the south side of St. Mary, to total just over 7 acres. So this is the portion of land that the agreement that you've reviewed in the past, and that is recommended to you this evening for the $200,000. I just want to clear up for anybody, because we don't have a map and a pointer and pictures and everything. This is not the totality of the empty Bryant lot. What is still left in the possession of the board and of the district is still the vast, vast, vast majority of that property that is still has the size and ability to build up to a middle school sized school on it, which is what it always could build. It never was big enough to put a full high school on it. So I just want to be, as best I can with my words and my description, explain only a 20-foot strip to the south, and what is behind St. Mary's already heading to the east is this strip of land.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Burke.
Also, St. Mary has stated, and it's in the contract, that it is their intention to use this as a senior center.
That is
Not-
correct.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mrs. Bonifield?
Mr. Francis, I know you said this in so many words, but just to reiterate, this is not changing our ability or what we could possibly build on this property, correct?
I agree with that statement.
It
correct,
does not
yes.
change
That's what I was
it.
trying to say, but you did in about a fraction of the words that I rambled on with. Yes.
Make sure that everybody knows that it is not changing what we could or could not do with that property. Mrs. Oakwist.
Yes, we retain over 28 acres of the Bryant property, which is the area that Mr. Francis described. And so with this area, this is again the area directly east of the property that's currently owned, and it goes back into that area, including the wooded area. So that large area of Bryant that you see, we still maintain ownership of over 28 acres on that piece of land.
Thank you, Mrs. Oakwist. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, to approve the purchase agreement with St. Mary Antiochian Orthodox Church. Mrs. Bonifield, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield says yes. President Johnson?
Yes, motion passes. That takes us to item 6F, approval to purchase handheld radios. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson,
Mrs. Bradford.
move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of 375 handheld radios through the State of Michigan My Deal Extended Purchasing Program for a total cost of $91,136.25.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. These radios were an identified need and are being recommended after study by the District Safety Committee, review by Cabinet, and in consultation with the District's Administrator of Public Safety. This purchase will improve the quality of communication and will prepare the district for the upcoming required change with the FCC from analog to a digital signal.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Bonifield.
Can you just tell us a little bit about, I think it was Channel 16, and what the advantages are of having this and that we don't have the ability right now?
Yes, these new radios and along with that digital signal will allow the district to switch to an all-district channel. So in the case of an emergency, everybody can get onto the same channel and hear urgent, important updates on from the district. That's not a capability we currently have. We'll also be able to, these radios, by being able to do that, also, they'll be able to cover further ground, so a wide variety of area, the whole district will be able to hear. On a day-to-day basis, this isn't gonna be a channel that everybody's tuning into, so there won't be a problem of every building's hearing every communication on the buildings that, you know, would be burdensome, but, the different buildings will have different channels that they'll be using. But then again, in the case of emergency, we can do a call out to our buildings, to our administrators and staff to say, everybody switch to channel 16, and that gives us that capability.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Smith, a question I have, and it probably goes without saying, but these come with a charger of some kind?
They sure do, yep. And I believe also an attachment too, so that it's easy for the staff to keep on them. So they won't be something, you know, kept in a closet, never used, that these are gonna be used on a daily basis. And speaking with the staff, this is something through the years, they've made do with what they've had in the buildings, but this is gonna be a very welcome purchase for them. This isn't just for the rare emergency, or hopefully the emergency that never happens. These are gonna be used daily by our staff.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers, for the approval to purchase handheld radios. Mrs. Benefield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Centers,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Benefield says yes. President Johnson.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. That takes us to item 7, and 7A is teachers for approval. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Burton.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and offer employment for the 2017-18 school year to the teachers listed on the attached document.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. This is going to be Mr. Archibald.
Yes. Thank you, President Johnson. These teachers have been interviewed along with many other applicants for vacancies that exist in our instructional program. We believe that the individuals listed are most qualified for the positions indicated and recommend that they be approved for employment.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Questions or comments from the board?
Congratulations and welcome.
All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, for the approval of teachers. Mrs. Benefield, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Centers,
Yes.
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mrs. Benefield says yes. President Johnson.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you.
Congratulations and welcome.
Absolutely. That takes us to item 7B, retirements. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolutions of appreciation for the services rendered by Janine Bickham, Donna Gossett, Carol Janowski, and Kristen Cesny.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Burton. Mr. Archibald.
Yes, tonight we bring before you the names of 4 employees who will be retiring. These individuals leave with a combined 77.1 years of experience. On behalf of the district, Mr. McDonald and I would like to thank these individuals for their years of dedicated service to the students of Livonia Public Schools, and ask that the board adopt the attached resolutions of appreciation in their honor.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Questions or comments from the board?
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations, and thank you for your service.
Enjoy your retirement.
You bet. All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Burton, to approve the resolutions of appreciation for employees who are retiring. Mrs. Benefield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Centers,
Yes.
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mrs. Benefield says yes. President Johnson.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. That'll take us to item 8, hearing from board members. And item 8A is the first reading of board policy JBD, homeless students, and IDFA, interscholastic athletics. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, President Johnson. A couple changes to the McKinney Bento Homeless Act. It is formerly known as the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. So we've made that change to reflect the actual title of the act. In addition, one of the changes made there is that students awaiting foster care placement are no longer fall under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. So we are removing that.
Questions or comments on that board policy? Okay. You're gonna talk about, or
Nope.
did you already talk about the
Dan
annual?
No, that would be me, Mr. President Johnson. Thank you.
There he is, okay.
Yes, and I'm here to talk about policy ITFA, and the policy, we clarified some language, we took away a reference to intramural sports. And most significantly, we made consistent the administrative procedures of ITFA and JN, which is awards and scholarships, that now match our current practice of awarding an athletic varsity letter after 3 seasons in the same sport. And yes, it has been, the two policies have been cross-referenced. So I offer for your further consideration and support the revision to policy IDFA.
Thank you, Mr. Willenberg. Any questions or comments on this policy? And just so, I'm just gonna say, for the benefit of our audience who may not listen to us very often, this is a first reading of the policy, so these two policies will not be voted on tonight. They will come up at our next regular meeting. Mrs. Burton.
Yes, just a thanks to one of our staff members who brought to the board's attention that we had a notation of 3 years in one place in our board policy book and 4 years in another. They're both administrative procedures, but I want to thank our staff for pointing that out to us and making sure we had it correct. There are over 600 pages in our policy book, so sometimes changes are necessitated in more than one place, and this is one where it had gotten overlooked, but it also caused us to take a few minutes to make sure everything else was just as we wanted it to be. So thank you to our staff member for bringing that to our attention, and if anybody else does see anything where they have a question or that's inconsistent in our policy book, please do bring it to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. And again, this will be brought up for the second reading at our next regular voting meeting. So that'll take us to item 8B, second reading of board policies HA and HB, and these do need motions. May I have one, please?
Yes, President Johnson.
Mrs. Burton.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and remove the policies listed below. Board Policy HA, Professional Personnel, Negotiations. Board Policy HB, Non-Professional Personnel, Negotiations.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Bonifield. Mr. Archibald.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Again, as a reminder, as we've talked about in previous meetings, these two policies simply were enacted in 1988 and reference former policies that were deleted from the board policy manual at that time, and simply refer, for the given sections, refer individuals to various collective bargaining agreements. So they've served their time since 1988, but are no longer necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Any question or comment on this motion? Seeing none, we have a motion to remove board policy HA and HB by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Bonifield. Mrs. Bonifield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield says yes. Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
President Johnson?
Yes, motion passes. That takes us to item 8C, second reading of board policy JGCA, physical examinations for athletic participation. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
By November, we're probably gonna.
Yeah.
Mr. Centers.
Thank you. Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for Board Policy JGCA, physical examinations for athletic participation.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Willenberg.
Thank you, President Johnson. Again, after over a month of discussion, just to remind you all, the overall intent of this policy is to keep the health of our students as a paramount concern and to keep the district in proper alignment with the rules and regulations of the Michigan High School Athletic Association. The overarching concept is that our student athletes are cleared by medical personnel before they participate in school-sponsored athletic programs. Remember, we added the words tryouts to further explain when we would require physical exams. We also made clear that it must be a LPS-approved physical form that is utilized by all. I offer for your support the revisions to board policy JGCA.
Thank you, Mr. Willenberg. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Bonnefield.
I just want to thank Mr. Wellenberg and the rest of cabinet that worked on this. This is very important for the students and their protection, and it was well researched, and the changes that we've made are very important to our kids. So, and there was a lot of time taken on this particular policy, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Bonnefield. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Bradford, to adopt the board policy JGCA. Would you take the roll, Mrs. Bonnefield?
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Johnson?
Yes, motion passes. That takes us to item 8D, second reading of board policy JGFF, driving and parking. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson,
Mrs. Bradford.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for Board Policy JGFF, driving and parking.
Support.
Stereo.
Yes.
I heard Mrs. Burton, so we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mrs. Burton. Mr. Willenborg.
Thank you again, President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Willenborg.
This policy had last been reviewed 20 years ago. The new policy confirms that parking and driving is a privilege and a responsibility. We expect that drivers, that vehicles be registered and the drivers be licensed. It also confirms that the school administration shall develop rules for safe driving. In addition, the policy makes clear to students, drivers, that their vehicles in our school lots are subject to search by school or law enforcement personnel. The administrative procedures portion of the policy sets guidelines for high school administrators as they allocate parking passes at their facilities. I offer for your support the revisions of board policy JGFF.
Thank you, Mr. Willenborg. Are there questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Burton.
Just one, not on this particular policy, but the fact that the cabinet and board have been going through quite heavy work on policies lately, and whenever we finish our work, it's one other person spends a considerable amount of time on that, and that is Jill Wozniak. There's a rather extensive, secure process that we have to go through in order to put these policies into our policy book and specifically onto our website. And it sounds easy, and it's not, and it's very time consuming. But it's very important to the board and very important to the district, and we would like to thank Jill Wozniak very sincerely for her efforts.
I'll second that, certainly.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jill.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mrs. Burton, to adopt board policy JGFF, driving and parking. Mrs. Bonnefield, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Johnson?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 8E, hearing from board members. As it has become customary with this board, we generally appoint one person to speak for the board at the end of our agenda. We found that that is probably a little bit easier to do than having 7 board members essentially mimic one another and go over things. So tonight we are going to ask Mrs. Frank to speak on behalf of the board, and after she's done, if anyone wants to add additional comments, they're free to do so. Mrs. Frank.
Thank you, President Johnson. This was a lovely meeting tonight, and hearing from so many staff and students was so exciting to hear exactly what's going on in the district. And it is encouraging and to hear the future of our city, the future of our country is in good hands. These kids are very well spoken, and it is awesome to hear. We started out the evening with our Golden Apple Award from Holmes. Kim DeSantis, who has done a phenomenal job in so many roles and so many opportunities over the years, and I think this is 16 years she's been a volunteer in the district for Holmes, but also for Robotics. So she does an amazing work for them too. So we thank Kim and all of the volunteers across the district. Then we also heard from Sunshine Weber and her amazing students from Franklin's International Baccalaureate. The students who spoke were just so excited about the program, and it was neat to hear from a parent's perspective. She brought a parent in so we could hear from his perspective, as well as past graduates and a current student too. So that was phenomenal to hear from. And then Priscilla David accepted the March is Reading Month notice, and we talked a little bit about that, which is, again, we want to thank all of our staff and volunteers who are helping to make reading fun for our kids in our schools. And then Mrs. Oquist did a phenomenal job of updating all of us on everything that's going on in the district, so I won't even try to repeat that except for to say Stevenson has Mary Poppins Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. and Kappa has very limited seating on Friday and Saturday at 7. They have a performance as well. So if anyone's looking for weekend entertainment, to come out and see them. The robotics team came, and again, these students are just phenomenal speakers, and to share their passion with what they're doing, it was so wonderful to hear. They're going to have their competition at Churchill on March 30th and 31st, and it kicks off on Friday at 10:30 a.m. if anyone wants to come and see that robotics competition. Did they say 50 students or 50 teams are competing?
40 plus teams.
So it's amazing, all of the engineering and lots of things that are going on there. We approved such exciting things. As a board, we talk about things for weeks, and so it seems like it's a long process, but when we get to tonight and we get to actually approve things, and the administration gets to get started on seeing things that we're doing. So we approved some construction for Buchanan, Webster, Jackson, the Career Center, the Career Tech Center, as well as paving projects for Buchanan, Randolph, Cooper, and approved turf replacement at Churchill, Franklin, and Stevenson. We were touching lots of buildings tonight, and we ran through it fairly quickly only because we have been talking about it for weeks, and the administration has been talking about it for months. But these are big deals that are going to affect each child, or many children in LPS and staff, and it's just exciting to see the updates that are happening in our district. We approved the sale of property to St. Mary, but we do still own 28 acres, so we just wanted to put that in the notes. And the handheld radios, I think that that is a phenomenal purchase for our district. Again, not only for the safety for emergencies, but every day for teachers to be able to communicate in the classroom with the office, to be able to get something, the teachers that are out on recess to be able to communicate back to inside the building without having to send a child or that sort of thing. It's just an amazing way that we can utilize these and that they work, because I think lots of buildings have radios that do not work. And we wanted to welcome to Cleveland. Cleveland hired 2 new teachers, Mrs. Hoekstra and Miss Rose, and so we want to welcome them to LPS. And the retirements, 4 retirements this month, and so congratulations to each of them. And we also updated our board policies. There were some that were just updated wording to more accurately reflect what we're doing, but some we changed the policies in terms of physical exams for athletes and the driving and parking policies. So those are things that sometimes we just update wording, and sometimes we actually go through and change the policy to make it really reflect what the district is doing and what our intent of the policy is. So those are some things that we did this month. And I think that wraps up the summation of our meetings.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank.
You're welcome.
Other comments or questions? We'll go down to Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you, President Johnson.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, in addition to what my esteemed colleague has said about the robotics competition coming up at Churchill, firstly, that it's family friendly, and all importantly, it is free. However, I believe that they will be collecting boxes of cereal for the Blessings in a Backpack cereal drive. So if you come to the competition, please bring a box of cereal to drop off at the box at the door.
Thank you. Mr. Centers, did you have something to add? Not you. Mrs. Battlefield.
I'm very excited about Mary Poppins. On a personal level, my son is on the crew, and I found out that the decision was made to let Mary Poppins fly.
Yay.
So I want to thank the district, and we are very excited, and my son is especially excited that Mary Poppins gets to fly, and we could never have done that in the old auditoriums, and it's just fantastic that the kids get to do this. So super excited about the play.
Would you say it's supercalifragilistic?
Oh, no, Liz, yes. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Battlefield. Other questions or comments?
Along the, President Johnson.
Yes, Mrs. Bird.
Along the lines of Mary Poppins, if you are looking to see some of your tax dollars at work, take advantage of opportunities like this to check out the interior of our new auditoriums. They are beautiful. They're serving our students so well. Franklin and Stevenson's rather are fully up and running and functional. Churchill is still under construction right now. Theirs will be open in the fall, but they're absolutely beautiful. You'd be very, very proud. So take the opportunity, as was stated earlier, to enjoy some wonderful entertainment and see the results of your tax dollars. And we thank the community so much for their support for all of these projects that we're putting together.
Thank you, Mrs. Bird. Yes, Mrs.
May I
Oakwest.
hop into hearing from board members
You
for a
want to
moment?
swing in?
I do. As Mrs. Frank mentioned, as she talked about the renovation projects, I want to congratulate the board because you may or may not realize that was our final large-scale vote this evening with regard to our 5-year implementation of the bond issue passed by our amazing community in 2013. So it was in winter of 2014, after many months of planning, that we brought to you the very first items for our first phase of schools that summer. Although we still have some work we'll be doing next summer and continuing on, this was our last large-scale group of projects, our last 5 schools. So I congratulate the board on their tremendous work and study and efforts, and it did not seem 5 years ago that we would be at this point. So we are very, very excited about this summer, and especially next fall to be sitting in this room and sharing with you the final phase of projects completed, thanks to our great community.
Thank you, Mrs. Oakwest. Anything else from the board? If not, we are at the end of our agenda, and with no additional business to be brought before the board, we are adjourned. Thank you.